welcome to the first episode of the Goodrum show for 2022. Oh yes, the anniversary year. I'll probably mention that on more than one occasion, certainly until we get to, I think it's February, Anyway, a big thank you to everybody that watched the last episode of the show, liked, commented, all that kind of stuff. I hope you had a lovely festive period with plenty of good drams and so on and so forth. Today's episode of the show I had hoped to possibly do before the end of the year, but obviously that wasn't possible. So we're kind of Christmas leftovers part 2, if you like. Christmas or the festive period is very much a traditional time of year. It has all those lovely rituals. It's probably one of the few times a year where families kind of get together all around a table and share a big 3-course meal. So you have the rituals of the good wine, the port with the cheese, or the Christmas pudding, falling asleep in front of the Queen's speech, and arguments on Boxing Day. I mean, yeah, all these wonderful little rituals. And of course, obviously, the ritual that we're talking about today is the ritual of the after dinner cognac or Armagnac or brandy or whatever. And yeah, it's lovely that cognac sales and Armagnac sales spike at this time of year, but it's also a bit of a shame because obviously these spirits really should be enjoyed throughout the entire year. You know, they're not just for Christmas, as they say. And so I thought, well, yeah, let's take a look at some. I don't very often get the opportunity to do episodes of the show on these spirits because I don't get the samples. Normally they're just kind of in the run-up to Christmas, generally speaking. So I'm looking at some Armagnac and some Cognac. We're going to be looking at a couple of releases, one new from the independent bottling company Hermitage Cognac that are distributed by Bunch and Bushel, so thank you very much to them for the samples for today's episode. Also going to be looking at a producer, Cognac Lerat. Big thank you to Mauritia Beverages for the samples for those two. Now, Lerat is kind of quite interesting property. I mean, when I went to visit back in about, I think it was 2005, the property had recently been sold. Old man Lerat had died, and the property had been purchased by a chap called Francois Abacassis, who had a fairly big brand called ABK, I believe, and was after a prestigious property to add to his portfolio, and obviously Leyrat certainly fitted the bill. Now, Leyrat is quite interesting in that it's not in the Grand Champagne region of cognac. Now, of course, Grand Champagne is always thought of as producing the best cognacs, etc., etc., and arguably, yep, that is very true. They certainly produce probably the most powerful cognacs. But there are other regions in cognac, Borderies and Finois, for example, where Lerat is, different soil types, producing a slightly different style of cognac. And, you know, you shouldn't look down your nose just because it's not Grand Champagne. At the end of the day, it's like you could be a Grand Champagne producer and produce a rubbish spirit. Just exactly the same as, say, in Burgundy, where you have vineyards on, say, a Grand Cru slope, say a Clos Veugeot, for example, and you produce a rubbish wine. You can still sell it as a Clos Veugeot because it comes from there and with the associated price tag, same with Grand Champagne. But, you know, if your wine isn't very good, just like your spirit is not very good, then, well, it's kind of a bit pointless, really, isn't it? So, you know, looking outside of that kind of area, we should be expecting something a little bit different, which hopefully the two samples from Lerat will show. Another interesting point is that when the domain changed hands, the domain is actually called Domaine Chez, Maillard. Again, excuse any dodgy French pronunciations and please no comments. The previous owner, old man Lerat, had kind of hadn't written down any of his blends. Now, as you know, cognac is generally a blend of different vintages, and so to keep a house style. But they were all in his head. You know, nobody knew. You know, so when Francois Abacassis purchased the property, it was kind of like, well, they obviously had stocks of old man Lerat's bottlings, but they had to basically start again from scratch, which is what they did. So literally going through the whole inventory of casks and figuring things out, producing obviously a new range of bottlings. So I think these last two will be quite interesting. The other property I'm looking at is a property called Domaine de Cassignoles, in Armagnac. Now again, Armagnac very similar to Cognac. The majority of the best, in inverted commas, spirits come from the Basse-Armagnac region in the northwest of the country. But again, there are other parts, not quite so many, but there's Haut Armagnac, and the other one is Ténérez, or Ténérez, possibly, however you wish to pronounce it. And again, although you can probably discount Haut Armagnac because the quality of the grapes is generally too good to actually use for turning into a spirit, and most producers will produce a table wine. But sort of Ténérez has this sort of wonderful different terroir, producing a different style of Armagnac, generally lighter and floral. And again, hopefully we will see that in the samples. So I don't think there's much else to say apart from let's have a look at today's line. Right, okay, so in my rush to begin the episode, or stick my nose in the glass anyway, I forgot to mention the other two samples, which are from Hermitage Cognac, again distributed by Bunch and Bushel, so thank you very much for those samples. So obviously, as you well probably remember, I did an episode on their single vintage independent bottlings, I guess, for want of a better word, last year. So we've got a couple of them to kind of share with you. But we're going to kick off with Domaine de Cassignoles Blanche d'Armagnac, which is really interesting. So I've never tasted new make Armagnac, even though I visited the area. I never got the opportunity to actually taste any new make spirit. Tasted some younger spirit, but not some new make. So this is their effectively their white. I believe the grape varieties they use are Uni Blanc, Fort Blanche and Bacco, the classic three, and it is bottled at 45%. Next bottling we'll be looking at is the same properties 5-year-old Armagnac, bottled at 42%. I believe grape varieties similar, certainly I think there's Fort Blanche and Uni Blanc, the two main workhorses I should say of the region, but I think there's some Sauvignon in there as well apparently, but that I couldn't say for definite. Then we're going to move on to the first of the two bottlings in the Hermitage range. This is the 2010, the most sort of the newest release from Hermitage Cognac. I think about 10 years old, I don't know for definite. I believe it was bottled either sort of last year, this year, so possibly 10, possibly 11 years old, and I believe comes from the producer Chez. Number 4, again the second of the two Hermitage cognacs. This is the 2008 that was released 2018, or certainly bottled in 2018. It is definitely 10 years old, and it was distilled in 2008, bottled, like I said, in 2018 at 45%. So it should be interesting. And the last two are two of the slightly more expensive bottlings from the Leyrat range. This is the XO Elite. It's bottled unfortunately at 40%, and it really should be bottled at higher than that, but anyway, some very old spirits in that. I don't know the makeup exactly, but I would guess, given the producer, I would imagine somewhere between 25 and 30 odd year old spirits going into that particular bottle. Certainly producers of that level, shall we say, tend to use those kind of aged stock, shall we say. And the final bottling is the it's called the Glory Extra. This definitely has 40-year-old plus spirits in. I believe these are a selection of casks, again, when they were sort of, you know, figuring out kind of what they had, they realised they were old, but I imagine they were so old that the chalk date had probably been sort of either rubbed off or was not legible, but certainly they believe that the spirits certainly going into that bottling are 40, at least 40, and probably well over 40 years of age. So kind of looking forward to finishing on that one. So anyway, But before we get to that point, we're going to have a look at the Domaine de Cassignoles Armagnac, and so we're going to kick off with the wine. Okay, so let's see what the nose gives us on this then, shall we? It's a little neutral, but it's got a nice fullness, a nice fleshiness, you know, white grape, fresh apple. There's a lovely sweetness there as well, which is kind of balancing up the slight oiliness of the spirit. Now, as you well know, sort of Armagnac is a slightly more rustic spirit, generally sort of produced on column stills or a single column still, without very many plates to sort of give it that kind of, you know, intense, oily, fainty character to begin with. But this has a lovely aromatic and almost perfumed aroma. It's really intriguing. Yes, there is a little rustic note there, but on the whole, really polished, elegant, and really interesting. You know, it's a lovely nose, and it's, like I said, I've never had the opportunity to taste. I mean, all right, this is not wholly new make spirit. It's obviously been cut down, but to the bottling ABV of 45%. But yeah, it's close as damn it to it. So let's see what the palate like. Again, that sweetness and that slight sort of aromatic quality is noticeable on the palate. A little bit more baked apple along with the sweet apricot, white grape, almost a sensation of spice. There isn't any wood spice, but it kind of gives it that sensation, which is probably just the elevated ABV just kind of giving it that impression. Almost marzipan-like note on the finish, good length. I mean, not majorly complex, and it just goes to show that obviously Cognac, not Armagnac as the case may be, you know, picks up an awful lot of wood character and kind of really needs that sort of wood character and that oxidation character. But again, it all boils down to, if you've got a really good quality starting spirit, chances are you're going to end up with a good quality spirit throughout your entire range. And for me, when looking at cognacs and armagnacs, that is exactly what I want to see. Yes, they can leave it in the cask for donkey's years and produce a complex rancio spirit at the end of the day, but how good is your young spirit, and how good is your new make? That's even more a key, I think. So yeah, lovely one to start with. Okay, so let's move on to the second bottling. This is the 5-year-old. Let's see what the nose gives us on this then, shall we? Light, elegant, floral. Now, I've not tasted a huge amount of Armagnacs from this particular part of the region, but from what I've read about it, it does seem to be an absolute textbook example. It has that floral lightness to it. There's a little bit of oak, you know, there's a little bit of sweet vanilla, ripe apple, grape, almond, little bit of spice, touch of honeysuckle, a little bit of baked fruit as well. It's actually got a fair amount of complexity for a really young spirit. I mean, normally you wouldn't expect an awful lot from a 5-year-old spirit, but maybe this is why they've bottled it at such a young age, to preserve that innate terroir driven character of the region. They don't want to kind of, like, you know, blast it with oak and oxidation. They want the character of the region to come through, and succeeds. And it's not expensive either, 30 something odd quid, so it's definitely, you know, within budget for a, you know, an everyday Armagnac. Let's see what pass on. Young, light, grapey, again, aromatic, slightly floral, quite minerally, again, subtle baked apple, sweet vanilla, touch of grippiness on the finish. Those sort of French oak tannins are sort of quite noticeable. Again, really good length, not hugely complex, but it certainly delivers what you would want from a young Armagnac. And like I said, when I had my nose in the glass, it's certainly, to me, it speaks of the region. It speaks of, you know, the that, or should I say, that part of the region. So, you know, and again, like I said, really good value for money, and I thought that was pretty damn good. Right, okay, so now we are in the Grand Champagne region, so yeah, the best area. Let's see what the nose on this gives us then, shall we? So it has that power, it has that depth, it has that intensity, deep, spicy, dark apple, marzipan, dried grape, bit of grippy wood tannin. I mean, that's an intense nose, but delicate as well, you know, almost restrained. I mean, I would like to have seen that maybe a touch of a higher ABV possibly, but 43, yeah, okay, I can live with that. Yeah, I mean, that's a lovely nose, it has to be said. Yeah, it's got that kind of, yeah, getting that grippy French oak coming through, pleasantly spiced, soft, you know. What do you want? Let's see what the palate's like. Wonderfully smooth, soft. It's got that powerful dark character, but a lightness there as well, and elegance. Again, sort of baked fruit, sort of almost kind of malty richness on the mid palate. Soft tannins, a bit of a bite on the finish, a little bit of spice. Good length. Recommended retail price of £76.90, and yeah, I think that's pretty good. I think it stacks up pretty well. It's a little bit more expensive than some other 10-year-old cognacs, but you know, I think that's really quite impressive and a very enjoyable cognac. Okay, so let's move on to the 2008 bottling. Let's see what the difference is with this. Similar, has that power, that elegance, a little bit darker maybe than the 2010. More dried fruit, a little bit more rancio, baked apple, maybe some sultana, sort of lighter dried fruits, some lovely spice, cinnamon, tannin, bit of tobacco leaf, a little bit of sweetness. I mean, this is, again, impressive. It's getting a little oaky, but it's fresh, vanilla-y kind of oak, a little bit of honey, nicely balanced. See what the palate's like. Rich, dark, quite sweet, definitely noticeable oak. Certainly I'm getting a kind of grip, spice, finish. I wouldn't say it's shortening it, it's shortening it a touch as it kind of, and maybe the sort of like the combination of that oak and that that sort of ABV is just impinging a little on the finish, possibly. God, bloody hell. Yeah, I'm not pleasing me. It's either got not enough ABV, too much ABV, and no. Nice complexity. Big issue I have with this is the price. Now, the recommended retail for this is £118.90. Now, yeah, yes, I could sell it for that kind of price, but here is the big issue I had with this, is that the next vintage in the line, which is the 1995, 19 years old, recommended retail price of £4 less. Now, okay, you can probably say, well, £4 is not a huge amount, but the problem is that I could see exactly what was going to happen. The customers would go, well, that's younger, why is that more expensive? And then you'd have to say, well, it's probably the ABV, it's the fact it's been bottled now rather than 3-4 years ago. And it would be, I wouldn't say tiresome, but sometimes you just want a bit of an easy life, don't you? You know, you just want to sort of go, I need a good bottle of cognac, that one. And so it would just be too much hard work to basically always continuously explain why this one is more expensive than the older bottling. So for me, it didn't kind of work in the range, and I really think that the price should have been looked at a little bit, a little bit closer. But you know, coming back to the juice in the bottle, the juice in the bottle is good. Whether I really think it's worth the money, if this was more in the 90 quid, I think I would have been sort of more happy with sort of saying, yes, this is definitely a great cognac to go for. But as it is, yeah, so that's just my personal opinion, and has absolutely nothing at all, as you well know, with the company that employs me. So. Okay, so let's move on to the first of the two Leyrat bottlings. This is the XO Elite. Let's see what the nose gives us on this end, shall we? That's a beautiful nose. Delicate, elegant, quite floral, fruity, toasty oak, a little bit of wood spice, dried fruit, oxidised apple. Again, we're in the lighter end of the dried fruit spectrum. Again, sort of apricot, dried grape. It's got that delicacy, that minerality, which is I often find in Fin Bois. And this is the whole point, you know. Let's just forget about, the Grand Champagne is the best region, or the best sort of sub-region, or whatever you want to call it. Let's just say producer. Producer is the key here. And in taking advantage of the region, the soils, the terroir, that kind of thing. There's a little bit of a cocoa beany note, some fresh oak tannins, but not too young. I mean, it certainly feels like it has a reasonable age to it. I forget what this is. I believe somewhere in the 100 and something odd pounds region. And yeah, that is absolutely stunning. I mean, it really is. I mean, it's not kind of hitting you in the face with intensity. It's kind of like, you have to work at it a little bit. You have to kind of dig into it, and that's part, to me, what makes a great spirit, is just kind of coming back to it and picking up some new nuances. Oh, anyway, let's see what that's like. Oh my God, that's so soft. It's just like angels dancing on the tongue. I mean, there was a little bit of an edge right at the finish, not a bitterness, just an edge, just to basically, stop it becoming maybe a little bit flabby. It's soft, dried fruit, elegant, delicate, again slightly floral, but there's an underlying slight darker note, a little bit of wood spice, tobacco, wood sap, toasty oak, sweet tannins, again maybe a bit of cocoa bean, again a little bit of chocolate. I mean, it is really complex. It's complex and it unwinds, and it's kind of not kind of hitting you in the face with intensity and darkness and richness. It's elegant, and it just slowly kind of like develops on the tongue, and that is truly a great spirit. I mean, that is beautiful. Yeah. Right, okay, and we're moving on to the last sample of the day. This is the Glory Extra. Let's see what the nose gives us on this end, shall we? Oh, you can smell the age on that. I mean, that's darker, more mature, really intense, almost raisinated dried fruit, tobacco, earth, wood spice, leather. Okay, you could argue at this point in time it maybe doesn't exhibit quite the minerality, quite the sort of high I don't, wrong word, perfumed, wrong word, sort of, it's darker, okay, it's older, and you can tell it's got a lot more wood character, a lot more wood spice, dark fruit, violets. I mean, this is not a cheap bottle. This is, I think, somewhere north of 300 quid. Bloody hell. I mean, this would just pair up so nicely with a cigar, and I'm not, you know, I wouldn't have too dark a cigar with this, and sort of a sort of medium to light bodied cigar. It's got a sweetness to it. It has a delicacy, although it does have a darkness to it. It's not what I'd call a contradiction, but it's just so complex. I mean, it is unbelievably, stunningly good. And I know, sort of, you know, a lot of you probably would never have the opportunity to taste this, and I'm very, very grateful to Mauricio Beverages for kindly letting me review this particular bottling, because it is frighteningly good. Let's see what the part's like. That's my tasting note. No, I mean, again, there's a darkness there, but it's got that beautiful elegance, that lightness of touch, that minerality. But again, dark, resonated fruits, baked apple, tobacco, earth, leather, old wood spices, coffee. I mean, it's got that lovely tingling sort of sensation. I mean, the ABV is just absolutely spot on for this particular bottling. It's just pinging those kind of wood spices right on the finish. A little bit of violet, some sweeter oak notes, apple skin. I could just go on and on and on about how bloody good this spirit is, and it is stunning. I mean, I remember the old range that Lerat used to produce. I think it was they had lot numbers, which was really cool. And again, the spirit was just absolutely sublime. And I love those old bottlings, and I think I've got one somewhere in the collection. I think it's I forget which one it is now. But yeah, Francois purchased a damn good producer, damn good distillery, some lovely aged stocks. Yeah, it's a huge pocket full of cash, it has to be said at the end of the day. But sometimes, you know, sometimes it's just worth it. Right, okay, so let's sum today's episode of the show up. And so, you know, again, big thank you to Bunch and Bushel and to Mauricio Beverages for the samples for today's episode of the show. Appreciate your continued support, and I hope you like the review. The Domaine Cassignoles, I mean, I like what they're doing. If this was available, which it wasn't prior to Christmas, it would have been on the shelves. Not that I'm saying anything about what I would or wouldn't stock if I had my Gauntley's hat on. But if let's just put that to one side. Let's just basically say I love both of these bottlings. I love the white Armagnac. A lot of people probably wouldn't buy it, you know. But, you know, if you love interesting spirits and just want to see beyond the curtain of oak, then, and you're not going to break the bank to do so. You know, it's lovely. The 5-year-old is gorgeous. I think it's a lovely bottling. I must admit, okay, I'm going to sort of stick my Gauntley's hat back on again, but I haven't said this. I took a bit of a flyer on this, it has to be said. I wanted some of the white, which wasn't available, but the 5-year-old was, and I just thought, well, the white is such a good quality. The 5-year-old can't be crap, can it? So I basically said, look, okay, yeah, I'll have some of that. Send me a sample, you know, and sort of crossed my fingers and hoped, and well, I was my instincts were correct, shall we say, which is always good to sort of know, isn't it? Anyway, on to the 2010 Hermitage. Yeah, bottling. Yeah, lovely. Can't complain with that. I think price worked, and I would be, quite happy with that. The 2008, I think, sort of, while I was tasting it, I mentioned my reservations with regards to that, but the reservations, like I said, really don't pertain to the quality of the juice, more to do with the pricing, but that's incidental. The Cognac Elite, I mean, just a lovely spirit, and again, showing the differences in the different regions. The fact that here we have a sort of a producer in the Finois region producing a Finois cognac, and that is it. It's not just a cognac; it's a Finois cognac, and I think that's how it should be sort of looked at. That's, like I say, it's not doing any disrespect to Grand Champagne or any other part of the region. Like I said, it is very much indicative, and it's a real good quality spirit at the end of the day. And as for the Glory, well, that was, well, what can I say? It was a stunning spirit, absolutely stunning. Yeah. So there you have it. I hope you had a lovely festive period, and hopefully somebody purchased a bottle of great cognac or Armagnac for you, or maybe even bought it yourself, I don't know. And if you didn't, then maybe sort of check out these particular bottlings, because like I said, a cognac or an Armagnac is not just for Christmas. Anyway, that's this week's episode of the show in the bag. No idea what I'm going to be doing next week, but hopefully it will be interesting. So, hope you had a good New Year's Eve, good dramming, and good afternoon.